It's time for more coaching and coffee talk. Today, I'm very excited that an old friend, Dr. Darin Mazepa, is joining us. He's a chiropractor. He's the clinical director of Vitality Natural Healthcare Center, a lifelong resident of the Lehigh Valley, where we both went to high school at Emmaus High School. Dr. Darin is passionate about four things: being the best father he can be to his son, Kaimana, his love for the Hawaiian Islands, especially Kauai, attending concerts and hearing live music, and transforming the lives of suffering people through reorganizational healing, which we'll talk about. Over the last 25 years, Dr. Darin has helped thousands of patients live happier, more productive lives, whether it's through the most gentle form of chiropractic, allergy elimination, or nutritional counseling, and he speaks often at local, national, and international health conferences. Dr. Darin, thanks for being here.
That guy sounds cool.
I know. Well, he is cool.
All right. I'm so happy to be here, buddy. So awesome to be here. And thanks for the invite.
Yeah, for sure. I like, I lifted this intro from your website, and I actually thought we're going to talk about these things maybe in reverse order.
Yeah, cool.
And talk first of all about your business and about this idea of reorganizational healing, reorganizational healing. But first, we got to talk a little bit about Emmaus High School, where we went to high school.
Yeah,
we had some things in common. I was a little. Am I 2 years ahead of you or more?
I think it's 4. I was 87.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
I was 84. I was 84.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but we both had funny hairstyles.
Yeah, we did.
And funny wardrobes.
Yeah, we did.
Wasn't funny to us. We were dead serious about it, but it was funny to other people.
Right. And it's very funny in retrospect.
And it's very funny. I was dressing like David Bowie, and you had more of your own thing going on with the punk rock and the mohawk in high school. And were you bullied for that? Because I was bullied quite a bit, but I haven't heard you talk about being bullied so much. You were very well liked.
I wasn't bullied. I think I was stared at. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting was, just in general, I did my best to kind of transcend cliques. I had so many friends who were like in the alternative punk rock scene. Yeah. I had so many friends who were I dated the preppy girls, I had friends who went to Votech. Yeah. I had friends who were in the art community. I spent most of my time down in the art room. God bless Miss Bab for letting me hang out down there.
I love Miss Bab.
Yeah, she was great. So it was just that whole idea of I didn't get picked on or bullied very much because I was at least acquaintances with most of those crowds. Mm. The exception might be the hardcore, heavy metal people, because there was always this perceived metal versus punk nonsense that, never made sense to me. I mean, hell, I love Metallica, and if you think about punk rock and heavy metal, we don't agree on much, but we all agree on Motorhead, it's just how it is.
Yeah. Well, I love that you stayed in this community and decided to open a business in basically your hometown. I often, when I look back, I think, you know what? I probably could have been very happy just taking over for Mr. Gibbs, our gym techer, the gym teacher that I had at the time. And I thought, I could, now I think, wow, reaching young kids is probably one of the coolest things you can do. But at that time, I was just I want to get the hell out of here and far, far away. Now, of course, I've ended up way the hell over here in Europe. So mission accomplished.
Yeah, right.
But so talk a little bit about. Let's go back since we're in your childhood. Let's talk a little bit about your dad, because your dad was a chiropractor, right?
My dad practiced in Emmaus for 42 years.
Wow.
He's been retired for about a decade now. He's living the life. I see occasionally people who were patients of his or talk on the phone with people and, and whatever. And they're always like, what is your dad doing now? And I always say he is successfully spending my inheritance on cruises and trips. So he's living the life. He just got back from Antigua, and he's having a great time.
That's awesome. And he gave chiropractic treatments to you as a kid, right?
Oh yeah, in
To
my
you and
household, it
yeah.
was
It was just
as
the
soon as
norm.
I felt a sniffle coming on, it was, Dad, I need an adjustment, or he'd throw some kind of nutritional supplement or something down my gullet. So this is pretty much all I've ever known is this. It's not even a lifestyle; it's just a life.
Yeah.
This is all I've ever known.
And was it ever a question that's what you were going to do, is pursue get a degree and
It
become a
was actually
chiropractor?
kind of a later in life decision.
Oh, okay.
My dad was very sneaky.
Yeah.
He asked me if I wanted to go along with him to this seminar in New York City at the New York Hilton. It was a big thing called the Parker Seminar, and it was basically like a chiropractic pep rally kind of thing. Great speakers, continuing ed, all kinds of stuff. And I think I was 17 at the time. He said I can come along as his chiropractic assistant and get a certification and blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking New York City. I'm thinking CBGBs, Bleecker Bobs, going record shopping. That's what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, I'll go along, sure. And we get there, and it's just huge. There's like 3,000 chiropractors there, and it was, became this incredibly famous one where the keynote speaker was Dr. Bernie Siegel, medical doctor who had a book out at the time, Love, Medicine, and Miracles. Highly recommend that book. It's incredible. So anyway, after the first day, I just was so on fire. I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, I want to be a chiropractor. And he was like, all right, that's great. Let's make that happen. And like years and years later, I said, you knew what you were doing all along. He said, yeah, I did. He totally like set me up for that. And I went along, hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah.
And incidentally, it's kind of cool to think that in 1962, my dad opened his practice on Harrison Street in Emmaus.
Wow.
And next year, 2022, my practice Vitality turns 25 years old.
Wow.
So next year, there will be a chiropractor in Emmaus continuously for 60 years.
Wow.
Which I think is quite a milestone.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And so talk about the process of when you were, you had this idea for Vitality, and you talk about the process of what you wanted that to look like and what you wanted to be included and what kind of services you wanted to offer.
It's kind of neat because my former wife and practice partner built Vitality together.
Okay.
And what we did first was we created the list of what we didn't want Vitality to be. It was almost like a subtractive method. And we didn't want it to have the sterile glass wall where somebody slides the glass and shouts next, that kind of thing. We didn't want it to feel like a doctor's office. We didn't want it to have, any level of intimidation for people who were, white coat fever or doctor phobic or anything like that. So that's really where we were starting. Then we went to, what do we want it to be? And we knew we wanted it to be warm. We wanted it to be inviting. We knew we were going to be seeing lots of children, lots of families. So we didn't want it to be scary to small children. So it had to feel like somebody was coming home. And that's really kind of the word that we used a lot, was just kind of warm, comforting home type of feeling. So we looked all over the place. We literally drove throughout the entire Lehigh Valley trying to find where was the right place. We looked at Bethlehem, we looked at Nazareth, we looked at Emmaus. I guess we stuck with all the biblical names is what we were looking at, apparently. And there was this building on Main Street in Emmaus that we would pass, 10, 15, 20 times a week that was just sitting there for sale. And one day we decided, let's go in and check out that place. We went in, we saw the exposed stone wall in one of the rooms. We saw this beautiful view out into the backyard out of that same room. And we were like, this is it. We found it. And the realtor who was showing it to us was like, don't you want to see the rest of the building? And we're like, all right, I guess it's academic, sure. But we knew we had found it.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
We had actually gone through the process of designing Vitality through the principles of feng shui. So everything we have in the building is done very purposefully, very deliberately. Placement of things, elements are involved, mirrors, all kinds of stuff like that. And it's by design. People say they literally start to feel relaxed when they're parking their car in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And that's not,
Yeah.
that's actually, deliberate.
Yeah, yeah. And what about the kind of services that you offer and stuff like that? Was this all stuff that you had learned about when you were like in chiropractor school, or did it how did you develop all this stuff? Like more of this kind of, because not every chiropractor, right, has this holistic kind of
Right.
medicine approach.
Well, you know me a long time. I don't
Yeah.
do anything normally. The way I look at even the practice of my version of chiropractic, I always say I'm a quack among quacks, because I'm okay with making jokes about myself.
Yeah, yeah.
I've always been fringe. I've always been radical. That's just who I am. It's also why I get the results I get with people who have been everywhere and haven't gotten any results or any relief or anything. What I did was systematically go find methods that, one, are incredibly effective, and two, aren't really widely known. It's just, there's things that are out there that work amazingly well that people just don't have any consciousness about, and don't have the advertising budget of Merck or Pfizer or every other medication that's out there. So
Yeah.
when we were putting together the menu of services, and it's also evolved over the years,
Yeah.
it was just a matter of, what do people need? People need help with autoimmune conditions. Here in the Lehigh Valley, people need help with allergies. We're like top 5 in the country for allergy, problems. People obviously need help with pain, but not necessarily, pain isn't the enemy. Pain is simply the roadmap. So as I look at it, we need to explore, what does pain mean? So we need to get a little bit deeper with that. And just put together this whole menu. Then we expanded it to include massage and different forms of massage. And I have a Reiki master teacher who also does mindfulness classes. I have a yoga instructor who does yoga classes. We're expanding those now that things are changing, as far as, requirements and whatnot. So it was a matter of putting together truly a holistic approach. And I put the W in the front of that because I see people holistically. My intake form is called the Comprehensive Health Profile, and we've whittled it down from, I think, 9 pages to maybe 6 pages. I ask people questions that they've never been asked on a health form before, because I need to know everything. There's a whole section on what's right in your life. What doctor asks what's right in your life? They're usually asking what's wrong. I want to know what brings you joy. I want to know what pleases you. I want to know what you do for fun and activity, because that matters too.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I just watched a YouTube thing with, you probably know Dr. Gabor Mate.
Oh, yeah.
And he was talking about, he was giving a lecture to the audience, and he said, how many people have been to a something ologist in the past 2 years, some kind of specialist doctor? And so many people raised their hand, and then they were saying, how many people did they say, how's it going, in your relationship right now at the doctor? Let's go down. And anyway, it very quickly went down to just one person who had a doctor that was asking them things like, what's going on in your life? How's your relationship going? How's it going at work? How's it going with your kids, or whatever, these kind of things that are can be huge stressors in our lives, But his whole thing was that,
I'm sorry, that's oftentimes where we start.
Yeah. That's why I mentioned it. It sounded like that. Yeah.
Awesome.
What about this? Can you describe the reorganizational healing?
Well, the method I use is called network spinal, and it is truly a chiropractic technique, but it's a chiropractic technique that sees us as more than just this meat suit that we're carrying around. There is truly this energetic, this evolutionary process of how do we take in energy and information. And as I see it, everything first is energy and information. How do we process that through our brain, through our frontal cortex, through our amygdala, the lower brain? How do we process that through our endocrine system? How do we process this energy and information? So if you really want to look at it, I'm trying to get people to upgrade from a dial-up connection to broadband. If you're working at dial-up and you still have broadband information coming in, you're going to crash. But if you're working at broadband levels and you've got broadband information coming in, you can process it much more efficiently. The trick is, if you're in that dial-up situation trying to process broadband, eventually, and I mean that, eventually, whatever mental, emotional, chemical, spiritual stuff is showing up will transfer over to physical. And in my practice perspective, that's how we have to address it. We have to address it from, let's look at all of these other factors and see how they're influencing your meat suit, how they're influencing your physical body, and work backwards. We've got this amazing network spinal technology that's able to actually process this information and liberate it. Look at it as bound energy that's stuck in the body and get it to be unbound energy that can be released and then stored efficiently. Like I said earlier, pain isn't the enemy. Pain really only has one job, and that's to get you to modify a behavior. If I keep hitting my thumb with the hammer over and over again, my thumb is going to say, hey, why don't you move? Why don't you get out of the way? You know? So that's how I look at pain. And people come to me in pain all the time. I'm not a back doctor. I'm not a pain doctor. I'm a life doctor. So how are aspects of your life influencing you physically?
And are there certain oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying that's the crux of what we're doing, is we're reorganizing people's lives. And I really like that. I like that.
Yeah. And are there certain patterns that you see, or is it usually something emotional underneath the pain, or stress, or it can be all kinds of things?
It can be many, many different things. And that's the nice thing. We really tailor our approach to the individual. It's the person sitting in front of me. You know, if a person's having an experience associated with financial woes or emotional things, that might show up in somebody who literally, digs ditches for a living. And as Freud said, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes you're just physically beating up on your body enough that it's going to show up. But other times it's relationship, like you mentioned. If you're not having a great relationship at home, it's going to show up in your body. One of my heroes was a woman named Louise Hay. She owned Hay House Publications. She wrote the book, You Can Heal Your Life. She kind of cracked the code on where these non-physical things manifest in your physical body. I love that she has this like beautiful array of locations for things, and it's borrowed from many different sources. Traditional Chinese medicine called each of the organs the house of something. Liver might be house of anger, kidney might be house of grief, that kind of thing. So very interesting to look at this that way.
Yeah, it's interesting that these kind of ancient medicinal approaches are actually finally gaining some traction in the West. And actually, I was doing a bit of research just before this, and if you just Google chiropractic, of course, Wikipedia comes up first, and it describes it. Actually, the first line is a pseudoscience, yada, 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 yada. And but it's not even really seen as a pseudoscience, is it anymore? I mean, there is scientific research that's been done with chiropractic techniques. And I mean, I know you're a man of science. That's why I'm asking this. But they've done lots of things to back up these techniques at this point, right?
That's why I love network spinal. It is the most scientifically, rigorously researched method in pretty much all of chiropractic. I love to say that I live in the realm of science and spirit. I can be your voodoo doctor while still understanding the deepest level of neurology that you're experiencing. So I can go head to head with just about anybody on neuroscience, and I can talk about chakras. And I can talk about soul body, and I can talk about energy body.
I need you in Copenhagen, Dr. Dan.
That's right. Yes, I'll fly over to Copenhagen tonight. I'll be there tomorrow morning. But yeah, and as far as the pseudoscience thing is, words are just words.
Yeah.
People get really upset. Chiropractors, I think, as in general, chiropractic and chiropractors might have some of the biggest chips on their shoulders because they've been so marginalized.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit about that stuff. If the Simpsons want to make fun of chiropractic, I love it. It just, if you aren't willing to have a good look at yourself and have a good laugh at yourself, be careful how you're treading, because you're taking yourself and life way, way, way too seriously.
Yeah.
I know what I do works. I know what I've got to offer. I know who I am. And I only want people in my office who want to be there.
Yeah.
And if you want to be there, let's rock. Let's change your life.
But too, I mean, I can understand it to a certain degree, because there are practical concerns where, like, when the word pseudoscience gets thrown around or whatever, but I think it's changing. But not too long ago, for instance, like going to a chiropractor probably wouldn't be covered on most health insurances and things like that in the US. I know when I was there, when I was working at the Metropolitan Opera, actually a chiropractor was covered on the health insurance. Is that I mean, is that an issue in the States still, or is more and more is it being covered?
I don't really pay attention to that because my practice is strictly fee for service.
Okay.
I don't take any insurance in my office. I don't accept assignment or anything like that, simply because insurance does not equal permission slip. The way I look at it is I'm creating a covenant between me and the person sitting in front of me.
Mm.
And insurance would be this third leg on that triangle.
Oh, right.
And basically they would tell the person what they're worthy of as far as dollar coverage. And they would tell me how to do my job and tell me how many visits that person is entitled to.
Right.
That's not going to happen. That's where, like, my punk rock nature comes out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to serve you. You're going to get 100% of me. I insist I get 100% of you. And with that covenant, your life will change. And nobody's going to sully that. Can you hear that punk rock nature in that?
Yeah.
F the man kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the joke I make, going back to your like quackery thing in pseudoscience, it used to be that, medical doctors and chiropractors would be feuding all the time and medical doctors wouldn't refer to chiropractors. Now, the joke that I make is medical doctors and chiropractors are on the same team. They're looking to get people well. They're doing their best with what they know. I happen to have a different approach. And nowadays, we all have the same common enemy, and it's the insurance companies. So that's the reality of it, is insurance wants to take your money. They don't really want to give it back to you. So the workaround with that, at least here in America, is I've been telling everybody to get an HSA or an FSA or something like that, which is you putting into an account pre-tax dollars that you can spend on any health service that you want. Pays for eyeglasses, pays for chiropractic, pays for, some people even get nutritional supplements covered. So the idea is, see, you're living in a country that has universal health care.
Yeah.
So you understand what it's like to not have to worry about these things. In America, it's still a situation where people have to worry about allocating dollars for their health, which I think is an absurd concept. If there is ever a universal right in the world, it's health and wellness.
Yeah.
So you want me to soapbox? I can soapbox that one pretty hardcore.
No, it's not, I mean, it's of course very nice here, but they don't cover chiropractor, and they don't cover, actually kids are covered for dental, which is nice, but once you're an adult, the dental is not part of, it doesn't factor into it. But so I want to talk to you about this. You always put some nice juicy memes up from time to time that get you thinking. And the one, I think it was from yesterday, was, how do you socially engineer all the socially engineered fear out of people asking for a scared planet?
I have a hobby.
Yeah.
I like to put provocative statements up.
Yeah.
Just to see who gets triggered by them and how they get triggered. And then I just kind of sit back and watch. It's one of those things. I just light the fuse and then I watch the fireworks. That's it, you know? And yesterday, it's so funny how you can actually put a statement up that's just ambiguous enough, but people see in it whatever they want to see in it.
Yeah.
And the concept of socially engineered fear is, you know, it goes all over the map, you know, and it's so funny how people immediately politicize that statement.
Yeah.
You know, stop watching Fox News, stop watching CNN, stop watching, you know, I would say stop watching news in general. Let's just start there, you know, because news is not information, it's indoctrination. Let me say that one again. News is not information, it's indoctrination. That's deep, that's heavy. Feel the energy inside your body change with that?
Yeah.
That's one of those things where we're not being told information, we're being told what to think. So my socially engineered fear comment was just basically, how are you doing with processing data and where are you processing it in your brain? I'm on this huge kick where we have now had such a long period of time where people were, I don't know what word to use, programmed to think from their limbic system and from their amygdala and lower brain. So everything that they're thinking about is from a survival perspective.
Like fight or flight.
Exactly.
Mode.
A constant fight, flight, even freeze state. And we'll get to freeze in a second because it's very critical right now at this juncture in life. But we're processing everything from that lower brain. And what that lower brain is designed to do is simply keep you alive. Frontal cortex. That's what makes Scott Scott. That frontal cortex and even prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain where we're able to experience so much more in life. Maybe, dare I even use the word joy. So all of these things happen in the frontal cortex. What science has shown is the longer people have experienced that fight, flight, freeze state and have been in that lower brain state, the blood vessels of the frontal cortex start to atrophy. And you literally get lower blood supply to the front of your brain. Your brain shrinks. Think about that. The part of the brain that makes you shrinks under massive levels of stress and duress. During this pandemic, this COVID pandemic, people have really experienced fear, rightly so. Absolutely. You're talking millions of people worldwide have died from it. People's response to that has been one of survival. I'll just use the word. That's okay if you're being chased by a tiger. When do you realize the tiger's not there anymore? And you can actually get back into a relaxed state and get into a rest, digest, repair state.
Yeah.
The idea of PTSD, and I think there's a globe covered with PTSD right now, is we think the tiger's still chasing us. So as restrictions are lifting and as people are able to go about their lives a little bit better, I mean, you know, the United States is opening up. There's more and more freedoms that are being restored. You know, nobody took my freedom away. I like to mumble that under my breath. But the freedoms that are being restored and the freedom to move about freely and so on and so forth is really where we need to recognize it's okay. It's okay to breathe. It's okay to walk around. It's okay to go back out into public. And that's very challenging for people because we've been wired for be afraid. Or we've allowed ourselves to be wired, or we've wired ourselves for be afraid. That is probably the number one thing that will deter people, will create unhealthy people, is that situation right there.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like PTSD could be a pandemic trauma stress disorder at this point.
Exactly.
Are you seeing a lot of people coming in that are just where you can just see that that's what's going on with them?
And I think the thing that's most tragic, it's young people. I'm seeing, you know, adolescents, teens, young adults that are just rife with fear.
Yeah.
And they're scared. I had a little boy in yesterday who's, I think, 7, coming up on 8. And, he kept asking me about, COVID. Are you careful with COVID? Are you making sure that you're okay? Are you washing your hands? Are you this? Are you that? And, an 8-year-old.
Mm.
And the 8-year-old should be worrying about one thing, and that's Minecraft. Let's be honest, They should be climbing trees. They should be playing in the yard. This is the kind of stuff that we should be thinking about. So I see that as, cultural fear.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it with my kids. I mean, my kids kind of did okay with the first lockdown period in Denmark, and then it was kind of like fun. Although one of my kids was particularly afraid of coronavirus, but then when they went back to school again, and then there was a second lockdown in Denmark, and then they've actually all had real problems getting back to school. They just don't want to go to school. And I think, I think that teachers are not like equipped with what they need to talk to kids about this, about what they're going through. I mean, think about what these kids are going through,
Right.
I mean, I always think for me, I really don't care, I mean, I always spend a little more time at home. I mean, don't go out that much anymore. I enjoy training outside. I don't even miss the gym, but for kids, it's, I mean, the contrast between what these kids are going through, for instance, and what the kind of childhoods we had, it's crazy.
I mean, think about the 1950s, duck and cover. Kids were actually socially conditioned that when the nuclear blast happens, get under your desk. But if you really think about it, did they do duck and cover for 14 months or 15 months? I don't know the answer to that. And I never really looked into that. But this is our generation, our children's generation, duck and cover right now. And it's a tool, but it doesn't have to be a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And, I see it in my son. My son and I used to love going to Costco. We used to love going here or there. And I'm like, hey, let's go, grab a slice of pizza at Costco. And he's like, I don't want to. And I'm like, really? Why not? I just don't feel like it. The reality is he's been somewhat conditioned to, I don't want to go into big places with lots of people. And that breaks my heart. And the other day he said, oh, I'm a shy kid. I'm like, you are not a shy kid. There is no way that a son of mine could be a shy kid. It's just not possible, So I see some, conditioning going on there with him that it's fundamentally altering his core nature, who he is. Yeah.
What do you think the answer is to that? Any thoughts about what we can do for this generation of kids at this point? Just try to encourage them to get out, or take them by the hand and get out there, or
I think live by example.
Yeah.
One of the things is we need to find ways of reverse this programming of fear. I'll put my thing. Some people put some great suggestions up there on my post about socially conditioned, fear, or socially engineered. Nature. Last year around, I guess it was March or April, kind of right when everything was shutting down in America, I took my son up to Hawk Mountain, which is a real beautiful place near us. Actually, I'm going there today for a hike. And we get there, and there's a sign that Hawk Mountain is closed due to the pandemic. And they put like yellow caution tape across the bars, and that's the only barrier they had. And I said to my son, I said, son, today's the day you're going to learn about civil disobedience.
Nice.
There's no way you can close nature. So like several people who were there, we hopped over that yellow caution tape and we took a hike, and we had a beautiful time. We were out in nature. We didn't catch the Rona from hiking up a mountain, the whole bit. And
from a squirrel.
I think that's, yeah, exactly. So the idea is, there's a couple ideas. One is nature. My brother mentioned that, and some other people mentioned that. Just being present outside. You know, I'm a big fan of earthing. Take your shoes off and go walk on the earth. Get your, you know, get your resonance in vibration with the Sherman resonance of the planet, you know?
Yeah.
Let's get some bioenergetic happening. That's an important thing.
Yeah.
And get you connected and grounded. That's a great thing to do. One that's a little bit more controversial, and I think it's really at the core of this entire pandemic, is I'm going to use a couple terms here for my religious friends. Get right with God. My non-religious friends, do whatever you can to overcome your fear of death. Because what people are really scared of isn't the virus. It's the consequence of the virus.
Yeah.
And the consequence of the virus for many people has been death. And that's real, and that's sad, and that's tragic. I know many people who've died or have lost loved ones who've died. So I'm not a denier. I'm not going there. But what I am saying is the antidote to fear of death is life. Just live juicy. My motto for decades has been live juicy. You've known me a long time. I've made a lifetime out of living juicy, you know?
Yeah. I've had some juice too, I guess.
Yeah. But the reality in my life is I don't have a fear of death. I know it's going to happen. I know I'm going to die. I'm not going to accelerate that process. I still look both ways before crossing the street, but I don't fear cars. I observe traffic. That's two different things. So my fear of death doesn't mean irresponsibility. It means responsibility to life. And I heard this concept a long time ago. Do you know the concept of the dash? When you look at a tombstone, do you know this?
Oh yeah. What didn't Wayne Dyer talk about that?
One of my heroes, one of my mentors, one of my heroes. I had the the pleasure of actually entraining Wayne Dyer in Allentown when he came and did a talk. And
oh, cool.
he was a big supporter of network care. He loved network, and he talks about when you look at a tombstone, you see a number here, and you see a number here, and in between it is a dash. Your responsibility is to make that dash as meaningful as possible. To fill that dash with as much joy and love and grace as you possibly can. People are so wired for that number that doesn't even exist yet that they lose sight of the dash. So I really like to look at it from the perspective of I'm making my dash as fucking awesome as possible, man. You know, that's it.
I love that. Well, I want to talk a bit about part of how you've made your life juicy. And this is I was going to say your love of rock and roll, but you really love all kinds of music. I'm always impressed with your posts and everything for like, I don't know. I think most punk rock kids probably don't have as eclectic music taste as you, but you really love all kinds of music.
So here's the secret why. I was raised, you know, in a house with an older sister and an older brother. They loved music too. So my brother, rock star, graduated from Emmaus High School in 1980, was in a band, you know, the whole thing. And his big thing was he loved prog rock. So in my house, I heard Yes and Genesis and King Crimson and Rush and all that stuff. That's what I kind of like my pedigree was. And then I heard The Clash. And I found my exit ramp and I went, okay, you keep going that way, Steve. I'm taking a ramp here. And it was Duran Duran. It was the Specials. It was The Clash. It was all this other music. It's like other. The category for me was other. Down at Seaside Heights, if you remember the New Jersey, you know, resort town of Seaside Heights, New Jersey, there was this guy every morning while we were down there would play this song. And he was one of those wheel games where you spin the wheel and if it lands on it, you win a record. I finally got the gumption up in 1981 to go over to this guy and say, hey, what's that song you're playing? What is that? And he said, it's this song Planet Earth by this new British band, Duran Duran. So my introduction to alternative was Planet Earth by Duran Duran. How crazy is that?
And can you believe they just put out a new single?
They're awesome. They're so good. Simon's still kicking it. Nick still looks beautiful as ever. You know, it's like, what's going on with these guys? But just back to that love of music. That love of music was in me, you know, very, very early, even from my mom and my dad, you know, that love of music was so critical. And I always say there's only two types of music I don't tolerate. And that's German opera and crappy country. You know, give me real, and I'm going to make a judgment here. According to me, everything up to about Garth is country music. After that, I don't have much time for it because it became country pop, you know, and it's hard to determine the difference between pop music and country music. But give me Willie, give me Waylon, give me, you know, Johnny Cash, I think, was the great grandfather of punk rock. If you really look, they say Iggy's the grandfather. Well, Johnny Cash is the great grandfather of punk rock, as far as I'm concerned, you know.
I'm pretty much with you, but I have to say, since I worked at the Metropolitan Opera for 8 years, I never would have thought I would appreciate German opera. But
okay, all right,
one of my favorite moments is in Wagner's Parsifal, when the Grail is unveiled. Is this amazing music that's going on at that time?
Right.
And it was quite amazing to be a part of those German operas. But I see what you're saying.
Give me a Viennese opera. Give me an Italian opera. I mean, I'll take, you know, Il Trovatore, you know, Traviata any day.
Yeah.
You know, but still, I'll need to dig a little deeper because I do have an appreciation for Wagner. I'll just have to look a little bit deeper.
And maybe can you share with us your some Prince stories? Because you are a huge Prince fan, and you got quite a few chances to meet him, right? Or to just see him in unusual venues, or did you
interact with him? Yeah. Let's see. Oh God, where do we start? That's a 3-hour podcast right there, pal. Let me tell you. The craziest thing, probably I'll go to like the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
The day that Prince was performing on Good Morning America for his 3121 album, my wife Jamie and I got up super early and drove to New York City to get in line, you know, get up there and watch Prince on Good Morning America.
Yeah.
And we did it. We loved it. We heard the soundtrack. We saw it all. We heard it all. And then we were involved in this thing called the NPG Music Club, which was an official insiders club that was like deep, you know, inner circle kind of thing.
Okay.
There was rumor that Prince was going to do an after party that night in a private venue that was only going to be available to 50 NPG Music Club members. And that was it. And the tickets were going to go on sale. And they were only $50. It wasn't about dollars. It was about, you know, just this insider thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was covering the cost of venue or whatever. So they were going to go on sale at 3:00. So we literally jumped in the Chrysler Pacifica and drove all the way back to Allentown. And it was such an exclusive thing. You could only buy one ticket. You couldn't even get a pair. So we get home. She's upstairs in her office. I'm downstairs in the basement in my office, and we're both on the computer. 3:00, boom, NPG Music Club. I shout up to her, I got mine. And the agreement was if we don't get two, we don't go. You know, that was just it.
Okay.
About 30 seconds later, she shouted, I got mine. So I went on to Priceline, which was fairly new at the time, and I Pricelined a hotel in New York. We literally threw some stuff in a duffel bag, jumped in the car, and drove back to New York City on the same day. So we literally made the trip from Allentown to New York twice in the same day and went to this club called Butter. Butter wasn't even a club. It was a restaurant in the Chelsea section in New York. Yeah. And it was small. It didn't even have a back entrance. Everybody came through the front door, including Prince. And so we get to Butter. We're standing in line waiting to get let in, and, you know, velvet rope, the whole bit. And we realize exactly how small this is. We're in line with 50 people. And that's it. And the rest of the club was total I mean top tier A-list people.
Wow.
Every single person in music and film and television were, trying to get in that night, and they were all there. The names, I mean, I hate name dropping, but I was up against the stage leaning against this huge black man with this giant afro named Questlove. Amir and I were talking about drumming, at this show, and it didn't really matter, because if you're in there, you're somebody. I wasn't, but anyway, if you're in there, you must be somebody. Behind us, they had like a banquette seating. There were 3 banquettes on either side. In one of them was Beyonce and Jay-Z. They were in their plaid sweater phase. They were both wearing plaid sweaters, and it was crazy. It was a night. If you look up nights in, I don't know, celebrity gossip infamy, it was the night that Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan had a throwdown in the ladies' room.
Oh,
I mean, seriously. This is the life I'm living right now. So as we walk in, I'm kind of, I'm the kind of person who will survey the landscape just to kind of get a lowdown of what's going on. As we're walking in the front door, I'm surveying the landscape of what's in front of me, and I don't realize there's this little bench seat right next to the front door, and Prince is there sitting on it, welcoming everybody. And Jamie's like, "Didn't you see Prince?" I'm like, "No." He said, "Welcome." And I'm like, "I totally missed that." So he's the maitre d' of the night,
Oh man.
So that rises to the top of Prince experiences, and I had so many others. He did an artist in residency experience at the Rio in Vegas, and we flew out for 5 of the 7 weekends for that. We got to the point where the people at the front desk at the Rio knew who we were and why we were there. That was really something. That was awesome. So I mean, the day that Prince died was one of those days where I didn't even know if I'd be able to see patients. I wasn't even sure I could get through it. It was horrible when Bowie died.
Yeah.
I mean, I was racked. I mean, if we could talk a little bit about Bowie in a second, we'll circle back, because I know how much he means to you. But when Bowie died, I was absolutely wrecked. But when Prince died, I was virtually non-functional. And I think the only thing that got me through was being in service, seeing people in my office, because it made it about them, and I had to take care of them, and it kept my mind off of what was actually going on. Because on that day, there weren't many questions answered. There were just, nobody knew anything. But it's a day that I celebrate and grieve every single year, And but Bowie was just as huge, The way I look at David Bowie was, you and I were equally weirdos. We have that history. We have that pedigree, if you will.
Yeah.
David Bowie was the person who gave me permission to be me.
Exactly. Yeah.
He was the person who allowed me to express myself any way I wanted to.
Yeah.
Because he did it. He did it first. He was the pioneer.
Yeah.
And so that's why I hold him and Prince in like the highest regard and esteem, because they were my permission slip.
Yeah.
So that's the Prince story. There's lots and lots of other ones, and opportunities and chance encounters and meetings and stuff like that.
Did I ever tell you my Prince story?
No, please.
It's short. It's not as involved as yours, but we were when Scott Miola and I were in a band together in New York, and part of our we had recorded this CD, and part of our kind of ill planned promotional scheme was just to go around and hand out our CD to famous people in New York City that we ran into, musicians and stuff. So we handed it to all these people, and we got into this club called Spy Bar in New York, where they had the after party for the MTV Music Awards.
Okay.
And it was like you described, right? Every rock star you can imagine was like in this place, and just circulating around, right? Billy Corrigan, but I mean, I can't even think, but David Lee Roth, just.
Was that 93 when Prince was on it?
That, my current brain cell function cannot recall.
Okay. But right. That's fair.
It might have been late. It might have been later than that. No, because our CD I know came out in 97, so it must have been 97 or 98.
Okay, later.
But the funny thing about it is the whole place is filled with stars. There's one place that's got velvet ropes roped off because there's one person who cannot mingle with everyone else. And then there's one person sitting at a table in the middle of those velvet roped area, and it was
Prince, of course. That does not surprise me.
You know, and Scott Miola loves Prince so much, and so we get his attention, and we tell him we want to, you know, this is our CD. Can we? All we want to do is give you our CD, and he looks at us and goes,
"Yeah."
You can see it, right? You can see it.
I feel it. And that was a good Prince face. That was a very good smirk right then, too. That was good.
It was the smirk. But the only other interesting fact is we found out, actually, Scott Miola's girlfriend was a waitress that night. And so we found out the drink that Prince was drinking was a Malibu rum and pineapple with a cherry in it. That was his drink.
That's funny. That's funny. The fact that he had any alcohol at all is kind of surprising to me, you know? That was a little bit before his conversion.
Yeah, maybe that was right before he stopped. Yeah,
that's funny. That's cute. Well, I have one other story to share.
Okay.
And it has to do with regrets.
Okay.
I try not to have regrets in my life. It's just one of those things that, you know, again, going back to the Live Juicy thing. One regret I have is I became acquaintances, then friends with Prince's backup singer, Shelby Johnson, through the whole Rio experience. We played poker together one night and, you know, just went from there.
Oh, nice.
And Prince would always perform Friday night and Saturday night, and then he would do an after party in his restaurant called 3121 Friday night and Saturday night. It didn't even open till 12 or 1 in the morning. And one of the traditions was they would grab somebody from the audience and they would go up and they would sing with Prince and the band. And the song they would sing is Play That Funky Music, White Boy. And one night we're there and Shelby grabs me by the arm and says, "Come on, baby, it's your night. Come on up. Come on up."
Oh my God.
And I'm like, yeah. Here's the thing though. You need to know that song word for word because you're singing on Prince's mic with him playing guitar right next to you. And if you mess up, it's showtime at the Apollo. You are skewered. You are filleted. So I know the song, but I don't think I know it like Prince level. You know, I don't think I know it that well. So I'm like, no, Shelby, I'm not doing it. No, I'm not going to do it. Nope. And finally she's like, last chance. I'm moving on. I'm like, that's it. Go ahead. Move on. And the regret is I could have sung on Prince's gold gun microphone.
Oh man.
With him playing guitar next to me, with all the band around me. And it's not even a stage. It's the floor in the restaurant. They just moved tables and chairs out of the way. And I didn't do it. I said no. What the hell is wrong with me?
Well, I can understand though. I can understand. I probably would have said no to my version of that, which would be jumping up and singing with David Bowie, you know. Sometimes it's hard to, I don't know if you've ever felt like this, although it seemed like you had really positive interactions, but I'm always a little afraid to, you know, it's always a kind of a anxiety provoking thing to interact with your heroes like that, right?
Well, they say never meet your heroes. Yeah. I get that, you know, and I totally agree with that, you know, because you can create a mythology bigger than actually exists.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if you actually meet them and you find out, oh my gosh, they're nothing like you thought, that's painful. That's cognitive dissonance, you know.
Exactly.
But I never had any negative experiences with Prince. I wasn't as, you know, in with him as much, you know, as many other people. I was still very much fan, not, you know, friend. I always waited for the phone call for me to be his personal holistic physician on tour. That call never came, you know.
It's too bad that call never came. Maybe he'd still be here with us.
Seriously, I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's other idols, there's other people I have that it's probably best I don't meet, you know, because I don't want to know. I would have loved to have met Joe Strummer. That would have been somebody I really would have loved to have just, you know, spoke with.
Yeah.
And but yeah, no, I know where you're coming from with that one for sure. Totally.
Let's do one more thing just to finish up. What would you give, like, can you give people a general prescription of like 5 things to do to take care of themselves if they're in this post-corona stress disorder phase, and they're feeling all this stuff? Well, you mentioned get out in nature.
Yeah, number one, get out in nature. Yeah. Go take a walk, take a bike ride, take a hike, go up to the mountains, go to a lake, go do something. That's a really important one. I think another one is, you know how to support your immune system. This is one that I preached all along. You know, there's the concept of the germ theory. There's also the concept of the terrain theory. Give your body natural vitamin D. Get out and get some sunshine, you know. Take zinc. There's now a correlation between the loss of taste and smell with zinc deficiency.
Oh, is that right?
So, yeah, take foods in that are high in zinc. You know, nuts have lots of zinc, egg yolks have zinc. You know, there's lots of foods that have zinc. I always look at supplements as exactly that, a supplement. Get your nutrition from food first, and then fill in gaps anywhere else. Vitamin C. Ascorbic acid is not vitamin C. Get the entire vitamin C complement molecules that make up vitamin C. Very important to do that. So number 2 would be support your terrain. Give your body the greatest amount of support you can give it. How about just drinking fresh water? Drinking pure water is a really good thing to support your body. You know, that's a big one. Number 3, find a way of practicing some form of meditation or mindfulness, or getting yourself out of that fight, flight, freeze, beta state. Let's get to theta. Let's get to delta. Let's allow our body to get into a state where our mind, our brain, aren't looking at everything as a threat. So I would say mindfulness and meditation are great ways of doing that. Body ways, you know, yoga is amazing. You know, I'm a huge fan of Kundalini yoga just because it moves energy so amazingly through the body. Let's see. Number 4, how about sleep? These are simple things. Make sure you're getting decent sleep. Make sure you're doing something before you go to bed to foster a sleep hygiene, if you will. And that's a huge one. Maybe not be on screens right up until you put your head on the pillow, or while your head's on the pillow. Turn off the box. Don't have the TV on. I do a lot of LED. I have lights in my house that can be changed to, you know, 144 million colors. I'll have red light on in my bedroom before going to sleep. Get rid of blue light as much as you can. You know, there's a lot to say. You know, again, I go back to brain. I go back to neurology. You can actually influence your brain just with light and color. So doing what you can to foster sleep hygiene is a huge one. And then lastly, and probably most importantly to me, is, you know, allow freedom of life to be expressed through your entire body. And what I mean by that is get the interference out of your body. You know, being a chiropractor, I look at nerve interference. I look at interference with patterns and behaviors. So do what you can, see a chiropractor, get to some kind of way of getting that stuff out of you. And probably, no, definitely the most important is get right with that mental, emotional, physical nexus. Your mental, emotional determines and defines your physical. Everything in the universe is vibration first. Every molecule in your body is vibrating. Every cell in your body is vibrating. Every organ in your body is vibrating. Make sure that vibration is one of love. and not one of anger, hate, fear, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if you can get yourself to resonate in the vibration of pure, unconditional love, that will have a massive, massive healing effect on your body too. The end.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to wrap up. Dr. Darin, thank you so much for making the time to do this. I really appreciate it.
Namaste, brother.
It
Thank you
was so
very
good.
much for the invitation. This has been fun.
Yeah. We'll talk to you
And
soon.
I expect to see your mug walk through the front door of Vitality like you did once before. If
I'll
you're
be there
ever in
again.
the Lehigh
I'll be there
Valley.
again.
All
I'm
right.
planning. Well, we'll see. Hopefully things keep opening up and things are looking good, and
Sure,
I'll get back there again. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Hope to see you soon.
I love you, man. Peace.
Love you too. See you.